has everyone covered. Can your internet do that?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inquirer Live at Gameday Central.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inquire Live at Game Day Central, presented by Xfinity. Today, we're back at MetLife Stadium, where in a little bit it's going to be Minshew Mania time. Quarterback Gardner Minshew was just named the starter today as the Eagles prepare to face the Jets here in East Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm Eagles beat reporter Josh Tolentino, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow beat reporters EJ Smith and Jeff McLane. EJ, how's it going?
What's going on, Josh? Man, I feel like we were just here a little bit ago. Right back to MetLife, back-to-back weeks. Yeah, I hope you're not sick of this place yet.
No, it's back-to-back weeks, and like what you said, the bye week is looming, but we've got a game to play here. The Eagles are, again, Gardner Minshew time. Jeff, how is it going?
Yeah, obviously things are much different here in terms of the stadium look. We go from blue to green. The Jets hosting the Eagles here at MetLife Stadium for the second straight week. But, of course, someone under center is going to be a lot different. It's going to be Gardner Minshew. Jalen Hurts has officially been ruled out, although all signs were indicating was to be the case as of yesterday.
Exactly, and we will discuss the significance of Jalen Hurts' absence and Gardner Minshew coming in. But I want to remind everyone back at home, Game Day Central, Inquirer.com/Game Day Central is the place you need to be throughout the week and on game day. Again, that's Inquirer.com/Game Day Central.
Yeah, I guess I don't need to repeat that again, Josh, but I will. Inquirer.com/Game Day Central is where we'd like to hear from you. Since I know a lot of you already have plenty to say about our predictions, here's the chance for your feedback to be responded to on air.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. Every week we compile our favorite comments and questions. Sometimes it's more comments than questions, but we compile them all for one of our favorite segments. It's called What You Said. So be sure to, throughout the week, put in whatever you're thinking about the Eagles, and we'll compile them and, review them for the following game.
All right, Jeff, I want to throw this to you. On Wednesday, Jalen Hurts said he was going to play. There was a lot of looming doubts throughout the week, and team officials leaning one way, others leaning this way. Just could you take us through the timeline of what happened this week at the quarterback position for the Eagles?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it was Jalen that was leaning one way. He came out Wednesday's press conference, sat down in front of office, and said that he was definitely playing. That obviously has not been the case. I think that the Eagles were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not sure exactly what happened at Wednesday's practice, but from my understanding, it probably flared up a little bit, and that was the issue. And then by Thursday, didn't take many of the first-team repetitions, and then by Friday, when they had the walkthrough, it was Gardner. The Eagles wanted to, again, give Jalen the opportunity to kind of see what he could do over these next few days, if he could get that ankle feeling close to 100% so that he could play, but it just was not meant to be. And he got here to the stadium, didn't feel good enough, and had been ruled inactive. He won't even suit up. So it'll be Gardner Minshew as the starter, his first start with the Eagles, and we'll see Reed Sinnett as the backup in case Gardner does get hurt. It's going to be significantly different offense with Gardner. I think a lot of people are excited to see what that may be. I don't think it's going to be, quote unquote, the quarterback controversy that people are saying. From what I understand, the Eagles still plan, no matter what happens here today, still plan on having Jalen Hurts as their starter from here on out.
And that's great to point out, Jeff, and all indications that, again, that what we've heard is that Jalen, especially over the past month, and I know last week was probably one of the worst games of his career, but he still put on some tape. Definitely some questions still about his game and the passing game and long-term future. But as right now, as we move forward, it sounds like Jalen Hurts, after the bye week, will still resume his role as the starter. EJ, have you been watching Minshew Mania tape? What are your expectations for Gardner Minshew? Pointing out that the Eagles, again, lead the NFL in rushing. What do you expect the game plan to be today with Minshew under center?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Minshew play a lot of games. That was one of the reasons that the Eagles valued him so highly to trade for him, is because he's a backup that has a lot of starting experience, and he's a guy, who's shown competence. He's a guy who you can sort of count to. I don't think you expect things to not torpedo when he comes in. Maybe he's not going to win you games, but he's not going to lose you games. So I think the thing that's most interesting going into this game for me is to see how not how Minshew's presence changes the passing offense, but actually how it changes the run game for the Eagles. A lot has been made about how Jalen Hurts opens things up for the run game. And, at the very least, we've seen that Jalen Hurts can be at the center of a really productive offense that's run heavy. I'm curious to see with Minshew in there how that might affect the way the Eagles can run the ball for sure.
Yeah, exactly. With RPOs, with zone reads, Jalen Hurts is the team's leading rusher. And I don't even think it's even close. The last time I checked the stats, EJ, I think the difference between him, Miles Sanders, the rest of the running backs was about 200 rushing yards. So that right there tells you just the impact Jalen has, not only in the offense, but in the rushing offense. As we talk about rushing, let's transition to other injuries across the team. Still some significant names out, Jordan Howard being one of them. We knew that throughout the week that he did not practice. But Boston Scott, Jeff, what is the situation at running back? Also with Miles Sanders, who suffered an injury last week here at MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, when we found out earlier this week that Boston Scott had an illness, you wondered whether he'd be ready or not, and then he missed a bunch of practices. But he's good to go. He's gonna play. Obviously feeling a little bit better. He didn't get many practice reps, but on Friday when Nick Sirianni was asked whether Boston would be able to step in without those practice reps, he said, yeah, I trust him. He'll be ready to go. So you have Miles Sanders as your lead back, Boston Scott as your, I guess, quote unquote number 2, although he ended up getting more carries last week. And then you'll have Kenny Gainwell, of course. He'll still be the third running back. So yeah, it's as it was last week with Jordan Howard still out with that knee injury, and we saw, as you mentioned, this running attack do what it has done in the previous 4 games, rushed for over 208 yards. You could question maybe how they went about getting there, because they didn't really run effectively very much early on. But with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, you feel two capable top 2 guys on the ground. And with Gardner Minshew, yes, he's probably got a little more arm ability than Jalen Hurts does at this point in both their careers, but they're going to still lean on that running game, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly what you mentioned, Jeff. Leaning on the running game, we've learned that all throughout Nick Sirianni's first year as a play caller. Early on, very pass heavy. He's learned his team strengths and the personnel that they have, at least in the building right now, and that formula, again, leaning on the run game. They lead the NFL in rushing with 157 yards per game. EJ, it was a weird week for Miles Sanders, for Boston Scott, like what you mentioned. Like what Jeff mentioned, Boston Scott did not practice at all. What are your expectations for those two, knowing that Jordan Howard is out?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to know where Boston Scott's conditioning is at after he's had a week off, but assuming he's good to go, I think you'll see what we've seen most of the season when both those guys are in. I think that you'll see them split reps. I would imagine Miles might be favored a little bit more just because, again, he's had the whole week of practice. I mean, like you mentioned, it's been a little bit of a weird for him too. He started the week limited with an ankle injury. It sounds like something he's just kind of battling through. It's the same ankle injury that I guess put him on IR earlier this season. So I think that they're pretty banged up at running back right now. But at the same time, I think that they've got 2 guys that they think they can count on. 2 guys that they can split carries with. So.
Yeah, we are at that point of the season where it's not, that odd to see a very lengthy injury report list, specifically, guys with illnesses. I mean, we're in December, we're in the last third of the season. Injury reports are, almost supposed to look like this at this point of the year, and the Eagles are certainly dealing with that. But they have the bye week next week, and I'm sure Jalen Hurts and everyone else is looking forward to that. EJ, Jeff, let's go on to questions and comments from readers. We're gonna start off hot from Johnny Knight, who says, "OMG, if Minshew was the QB against the Giants, the Birds would have won. Minshew, it's time." It actually is time. It's Minshew time here. EJ, Jeff, do you agree with that sentiment that last week if Minshew wasn't there, that they would have came out with a different outcome against the Giants?
Go ahead, DJ.
threw me under the bus on that one.
Yeah.
Nah, I mean, it was a bad game for Hurts. You can't deny that. But at the same time, he hit a couple of receivers in the hands near the end zone. Um, I mean, we could play a lot of what ifs, but I don't know if I would agree with that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not certain that I agree with that one. Go ahead, Jeff.
I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Minshew looks in this offense and whether it's going to be more effective. I mean, everything I heard about Nick and Shane Steichen and the type of offense they wanted to bring in here, it was more of a downfield throwing offense. It's the one based around what they did with Phil Rivers, both in San Diego or Los Angeles and also with Indianapolis. So you have to wonder if you're going to see a little bit more of that with Gardner. That being said, I mean, he's only had so much time practicing in this offense, and as we all previously mentioned, I mean, the run game has been what's been effective. But as in terms of last week, I mean, like that's just a complete, hypothetical. We don't have any idea how Gardner would have done last week against the Giants, but we will know how he will do this week against the Jets. And as I mentioned before, the Eagles are going to stick with Jalen no matter what. But if Gardner does have a good game, we know how that's going to play out here in Philadelphia, where the backup quarterback is probably the most popular player, usually when things aren't going particularly well with the team.
Yeah, and it's so interesting with the bye week, right coming up. So, going to be a lot to discuss as they head into Week 15 against Washington. And again, I want to remind everyone we're coming to you from MetLife Stadium. Gardner Minshew is actually warming up right now at the 40-yard line, slinging some balls to the receivers. So, just in a little bit, we're going to see how he looks in this offense. We're going to stay in the offense. Another comment from AJ Drums, and this goes to the passing offense from last week. Not one, but two possible game-winning touchdowns to win the game if only Rager could play up to the level of expectation. EJ, Jeff, Jalen Rager is such a hot topic in this city. What does he need to do over this next month and a half to really kind of change the trajectory of his career? Again, like what the reader mentioned, two significant drops. And it wasn't just those two drops. Definitely several more drops in last week's game from Jalen Rager.
You want me to take that one too, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you could say what can he do so much as he can run better routes. He catch the football when it comes to him. It's not super complicated what he needs to improve on. But I think that I think we're seeing his roles decreasing most weeks. He's not playing as much as he was at the beginning of the year. I think he kind of is what he is right now. I mean, sure, he could have a huge game here today, and that would turn things around. But right now, I think you're seeing what his role has become, and I don't know how much more you can really say about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been what's been happening here for all season as it's gone along. He's pretty much now the fourth or maybe even the fifth option if Kenny Gainwell's out there in terms of reads for the quarterback. Look, this has been something that's been kind of it's been building towards this since they even drafted him, and since we've seen him play in games. I mean, Jalen has had his struggles. Last year was not a great rookie year, but there's almost a little bit of a regression, which was going to happen probably with Devontae Smith on the team. He's going to be your number one option, so Jalen's going to drop down in terms of the depth chart. It's hard. It's hard for him to come in. He didn't draft himself in the first round. He didn't decide that he'd be picked right before Justin Jefferson. But those are the facts right now. And Justin Jefferson is already one of the top 10 receivers in the NFL, and Jalen is not even remotely close to that. In fact, right now, I think he's last in the NFL in terms of yards per catch. Some of that has to do with the offense. Some of it has to do with him. But Jalen certainly needs time. He's 22 years old. He's only in his second season. The Eagles are not going to give up on him. There were a lot of questions, and there was questions directly to Nick Sirianni about benching him, and I just don't think that was going to be the case. Number one, who you're going to put in that spot, and number two, again, you just don't want to give up on him. Doug Peterson did something with similar with Nelson Aguilar in 2016, but those are totally different circumstances, and they're totally two different people. And I think Nick is kind of reading this the way he is from his own perspective, and he feels that Jalen needs to keep going out there. Now, does that mean he's going to all of a sudden see 10 targets? No. I think they're going to make up for what they lacked in last week, and that's getting the ball to Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. I think you'll see their targets climb.
Yep, that's a great point. Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert had the same amount of combined targets as Jalen Rager's 7 in last week's game. EJ, let's stick on the receivers just for a second. Something you wrote earlier in the week, a piece that has become a weekly piece throughout the season as you focused on the draft. The draft is, a totally different topic, but still a hot topic. The Eagles are expected to have 3 first-round picks. EJ, you asked the question: offensive line or wide receiver? Where do they concentrate? What could you recap us on your thoughts on that story?
Yeah, it's just looking at their offseason needs. I mean, I think most of their biggest needs, especially through the draft, come on the defensive side. But when you look at their offensive, things that they're going to need to replenish, you know, I think there's a common perception that they're going to have to address wide receiver again, and maybe they do that through free agency. There's a lot of good free agent wide receivers coming in to 2022's class, but I just wanted to also take a look at the fact that this offensive line is getting older and that this team has enjoyed one of the top offensive lines in the league for a really long time. We saw what happened when everyone got injured on that line last year. They struggled a lot. So, I almost just kind of wanted to back in that question, well, based off what we know about the Eagles, the way that they value offensive and defensive linemen, having really premium talent at those positions, the way that they value that, which one is the bigger need? And I don't know. I mean, I'll let the fans decide. It's not for me to really decide, but I definitely thought there's a decent case to be made for another difference maker on the offensive line for sure.
That's a great way, EJ, to transition to our tweet of the week. EJ, what was this week's tweet?
Yeah, so I figured, the Jordan Mailata hype train, we could we could hop on it for this week. So it's a quote. It's a tweet from Thomas Peterson. He says, Jordan Mailata is the fourth highest graded offensive tackle in the NFL through 12 weeks. I kind of wanted to take a chance to talk about this because when the Eagles when the Eagles extended Jordan Mailata earlier this off or right before the season opener, it was still kind of a projection on what kind of player he was going to be. I think everyone in the building is probably hopeful that he'd be a long-term starter, but we didn't know for sure, and we still don't know if he's going to be a long-term starter. He's got to be healthy. He's got to continue to play at this level. But the way that he's played this season has definitely reaffirmed what the organization thought about him going into the year.
Yeah, the offensive line has certainly been, I think, one of the biggest strengths this season. Been an up and down year for Nick Sirianni and really his entire coaching staff. Last week, the defense only gave up 13 points, but we know how much we've talked about Jonathan Gannon and his growing pains early in the season. Offensive line: Jordan Mailata, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson. They've really held it down for the really entire team. I think, again, one of the anchors of the team. EJ, Jeff, I feel like we're going to have a slightly longer discussion on predictions for today. EJ, just general expectations for the offense. I mean, it's the hottest topic right now. Gardner Minshew. What do you expect from them today? And then give me a score.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if we've made it 19 minutes through any of these shows without talking about the opposing team. But I guess that's what happens when you've got to change a quarterback. I
And
think
they're
that
playing the Jets.
right. Well, that's part of it, and I think that's kind of what I wanted to bring up is that this Jets team is not very good. They've had some good showings against better teams, but especially with Zach Wilson in the lineup, I know he's got a bright future. Or at least people think he does. But this year, at the very least, his inexperience has really showed. He's definitely prone to turn over the ball. Make mistakes. It seems like if the Eagles could get pressure on him, it would be a rough day for him, as it has been for a lot of the season. This Jets offense is not very good with him in the lineup, and this Jets defense is not very good with just about anybody in or out of the lineup. I mean, they've got some talent. They've had a couple of first round picks that like Quinton Williams is a guy that comes to mind as a difference maker. But I mean, I expect we talked earlier about how the Eagles run the ball well against most teams. I mean, I don't expect that to be any different against this Jets defense, even with Minshew in the lineup. I think that, the Eagles have the advantage here.
Yeah, and you mentioned the defense just for a second there. Concentrating on them, I think Jonathan Gannon, they have to dial up the pressure. They're one of the least applied pressure teams in the league. They don't sack the quarterback that much, but they have shown when they face inexperienced quarterbacks, when they face young quarterbacks, you mentioned Zach Wilson, they typically have success to that end. Jeff, does Jonathan Gannon need to do anything different? Last week on the road, 13 points. That's a pretty good measure in the NFL. What are your thoughts on how Jonathan Gannon's unit has performed over the past couple weeks leading up to this game.
Yeah, there were many years here when, like, Jim Johnson was the defensive coordinator, for instance. If you had a rookie or a young quarterback, man, he sent the house after them. I mean, it was blitz after blitz after blitz. And I don't know if that's what Jonathan Gannon is going to do here, because they do have an advantage up front. If they just rush four, I still feel like they're going to have opportunities to get after Zach Wilson and make him, move off his spot and throw some bad throws, which is what we've seen a lot of this season from the rookie quarterback. I think if I may switch over to the other side of the ball, the Eagles have a huge advantage up front too. And I just don't think, if Nick Sirianni sticks to the formula here, I find it very hard for that to think that the Eagles will lose this game, even with Gardner Minshew making his first start at quarterback. They have an advantage at other spots too. On the offensive side of the ball, we know Elijah Riley, who previously with the Eagles, is now at safety for the Jets, and he's done a pretty good job for them. But they have a lot of holes on that defense, and that should be an area which they should have some success. So both sides of the ball, I think the Eagles got the advantage. You mentioned Quinnen Williams; he could be a handful, I think, for Landon Dickerson in pass situations. That's something to look at. Look, any game. Any Sunday is up for grabs in theory, but I feel like the Eagles should kind of come out with a win. I don't know. I think my score was 31-13, something like that. I still think it's probably going to be pretty much in that area, even with Gardner at quarterback.
Yeah, if I could just jump in with two of we talked about the pressure on Zach Wilson. I got two notes on that. First off, we were here, a couple months ago during joint practices, and I just kind of went over my notes on that during those couple days. And one of the things that really stood out there in my notes was that, the Eagles' defensive line just wrecked those practices for the Jets consistently. Zach Wilson had pressure the entire time. At one point, somebody tried to fight Javon Hargrave. They just got so sick of him, dominating the Jets' offensive line. And then the other note I wanted to have is that Zach Wilson has the second highest time to throw of any quarterback in the league, behind only Jalen Hurts. So
wow,
he definitely can hang on to the ball back there. So I definitely think pressure is going to be a huge part of this game.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out from those joint practices, that's been a topic of conversation all week. And yeah, you could pick up some things. That's a long time ago. And the Jets were coming off, I think they had less than a few days of rest after a preseason game. They had a lot of injuries. So I think that's why it was so lopsided in that joint practice. By the end of it, I think people thought the Eagles were going to go to the Super Bowl, but reality has set in. And I don't think the Jets were as bad as they performed that week. And I don't think the Eagles were as good as they looked that week.
Yeah, throughout that week, I remember Devontae Smith toasting almost. And it seemed like any defensive back that he went up against in one-on-one routes. But one matchup we didn't talk about, and EJ, if I could ad-lib throw this to you, Darius Slay and Elijah Moore. The Jets' offense is not hot. They have not been that great. But Elijah Moore has been one of those storylines that you keep up with, a very young receiver who it seems like has a promising future. He's emerged as their top weapon. What are your expectations? I know Slay doesn't necessarily shadow guys anymore, but he will be matched up against him a good amount.
Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Elijah Moore had like 141 receiving yards. He's a really, he's played. I think the last couple of weeks he's played like they expected him to. He's a first round pick for a reason. Really, was he a first round pick actually? Early second. 34th. But he's a super talented, super athletic guy. I think that's the type of guy that Slay has typically been okay with. He's bad. He struggles against like physical guys, I feel like, more than anything. A guy who's like more athletic, shifty, like agile. I think it's a decent matchup for Slay. But I definitely think that if the Jets are going to surprise somebody, it's probably going to have something to do with a guy like Elijah Moore for sure.
Yeah, Elijah Moore, again, emerging as their top weapon on offense, while Darius Slay is in the midst of a Pro Bowl season already with multiple defensive touchdowns. Just to recap, guys, we're sticking with the Eagles. I know we wrote our predictions before the Gardner Minshew decision. There were some questions again at quarterback. It's Gardner. We are sticking on the three of us on the Eagles.
Yep. Yeah. I still am not. I'm never flipping my prediction again after that Raiders game. I couldn't have been more wrong. Sure, any given Sunday, Eagles going to a bye week, new quarterback. There's a lot of things going on, but I still just think that this Eagles team it has a talent advantage over this Jets team. And I think the urgency's there now. I think last week you could argue maybe the urgency wasn't there as much. Maybe I think they just had a bad game. But I don't think that'll happen again. So.
EJ, before we wrap it up, we have two bold predictions from ourselves. You mentioned Devontae Smith in yours. I mentioned the playoffs in mine. Take us through your season bold prediction.
Yeah, I had Devontae Smith breaking Deshaun Jackson's receiving yards record. So I think Deshaun is at what 912. I don't know if you guys can help me out with that.
Yep, just under 1,000.
Yep. So I think he has to get to like, I think he needs like what 200 more receiving yards to get there. I did the math earlier this week. I think he needs to average like 50 yards a game for the rest of the season to get there. I mean, if he has two good games, he'll be there. So yeah, I think that we might see a long-held Eagles record broken by Devontae Smith by the end of the year.
Certainly, at least when he's getting more than 4 targets a game, I think that expectation is he can reach that. Jeff, do you agree?
Oh yeah, actually we may see it today with Gardner. Like I mean, I think we're going to see better throws today than we've seen Jalen Hurts, especially the last week, and you're going to get a lot more throws, so that benefits Devontae Smith as well.
Yep, maybe a 100-yard receiving game for Devontae Smith. Maybe he finds the end zone. Certainly, when they do pass the ball, they need to target him more. Nick Sirianni has admitted that 4 targets is not enough for Devontae Smith. EJ, my bold prediction, and I made this a couple weeks ago. I'm kind of I don't know why. I guess at the time, they had a lot of momentum, but after last week's loss, just raised more questions. I had the Eagles making the playoffs. I think their chances back then were about 40%. They've since dropped to 27.5, according to a few different sites. I think I'm going to have to go against my bold prediction, EJ. I'm going to have to switch up. I don't think they're making the playoffs. They got after this, they've got the bye week, and then they have 4 games against division opponents. They play Washington twice, and then they close out against the Cowboys at home. On a limb right now, EJ, Jeff, if you had to say yes or no, are they making the playoffs, and a quick why?
No, I get Eddie. Yep.
After you, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean the numbers say that they won't. The schedule is favorable, as you mentioned. I think there are a lot of teams around them, so they have to leapfrog a number. If you look at the teams, though, they beat the Saints head-to-head, they beat the Panthers head-to-head, they beat the Falcons head-to-head, so they have that in their favor. So, I mean, I'm probably going to say no. I think even if they go 3-1 over these next 4, they got that right.
It'd be
8 wins. I still don't know if that's enough. A lot of it could depend on whether the Cowboys play full strength in that last game. If they have a bye already, they might not want to play it. So I'll say no.
If they don't make it, then I feel like the 2 games that'll stick out is the Giants game last weekend and then the 49ers loss early in the season, because that 49ers loss, they might lose a head-to-head, and that might keep them out. So, I would say no. I do think, it's funny. I always go back to my prediction before the season, 7-10. I think that they've sort of exceeded my expectations. I think 8-9 is in play. I think 9-8 is in play. I just don't know if they go 8-9, I'm not sure that's enough to get them in. So yeah, I'm still going no.
Yeah, and I know you and I, EJ, have had discussions about the upcoming games at Washington. At least from our perspective, hard to see them winning both of those. We're thinking that they split there. But it's about that time. Gardner Minshew is actually getting ready to run out of the tunnel and warm up with the offense. I want to thank everyone at home for tuning in to Inquirer.com/Gameday Central. This is our pregame show. We're coming to you live every single week. Not next week, though, because it's the bye week. EJ, Jeff, you guys have any bye week plans? You guys just relaxing? What's on the docket for next week?
I'm gonna reacquaint myself with my couch. That's about all I got.
Christmas presents to be bought.
Christmas presents and Christmas trees to be set up. EJ, I saw you got a hefty tree there the other day.
My tree is like it. I went to like a tree farm, and that thing is. It looked good in the farm, but when I brought it home, I realized how big it is. It's like taking up my entire living room. So maybe made a mistake there.
Yeah, you guys got the real trees though. After practice the other day, I ran to local store and picked up one of those plastic trees. But again, it is time to wrap up. Be sure to stick around at Inquirer.com/Gameday Central to follow the game and interact with myself, EJ Smith, Jeff McLane, and our 2 columnists that are on site, Marcus Hayes and Mike Sealski. Don't forget, when you post comments that you'll have a chance to be read all throughout the week and also on our Game Day Central show.
Yeah, don't forget to join us here Sunday, December 19th. That's 2 weeks from now. Obviously, as Josh mentioned, there's a bye next week. We will be coming to you from home game against the Washington football team just outside Lincoln Financial Field at Xfinity Live. Meet us there around 11:30 a.m. at Inquirer.com/Gameday Central.
Yeah, until then, we look forward to hearing from what you have to say and continuing the conversation every week at Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Again, presented by Xfinity. And we'll see you next week, guys. Well, we won't see you next week. We'll see you 2 weeks from now.
See you 2 weeks.
Minshew time.